This destroyed building a sign of the deadliest single Russian attack on Ukraine this year. 2 ballistic missiles struck the central city of Poltava on Tuesday, hitting a hospital, an educational institution, and damaging the Military Institute of Communications building, according to President Volodymyr Zelensky. In a video, he said people found themselves under the rubble of the Institute of Communications building. Many were saved, but dozens have been killed and over 200 others were injured in the attack. Zelensky ordered a full investigation. Moscow has intensified its missile and drone attacks on Ukraine 2.5 years into the full-scale war. Ukraine was pummeled by the heaviest bombardment to date last week, while on Monday ballistic and cruise missiles targeted Kyiv. Ukraine has fought back, launching more than 158 drones at Russia at the weekend, damaging an oil refinery near Moscow and a power station. Zelensky repeated his calls for more Western air defences and urged allies to allow their long-range weapons to be used for strikes deeper into Russian territory. Kyiv's troops have mounted their first large-scale cross-border assault into Russia's Kursk region, for which Moscow has vowed to retaliate. Russia did not immediately comment on Tuesday's attack.
12-year-old Rama Abu Saif should be starting 7th grade. But, like hundreds of thousands of students in Gaza, she now finds herself sheltering in classrooms instead of studying in them. Her school bag, which was once full of textbooks and pens, is now stuffed with clothes. Most of her textbooks are long gone too. She tells us they were burnt to light fires in ovens and to keep warm.
Last year I was supposed to be in 6th grade, but we missed the whole year because of the war. This year I'm supposed to be in 7th grade, but I'm missing this year too. The class in which we used to study, learn, write and read is now filled with displaced people. We used to stand in line with the girls and do sports and exercise, but now we are standing in line to get water or at charity kitchens.
Rama is one of an estimated 625,000 school-aged children whose education has been interrupted by the Israel-Hamas war. Since the conflict began 11 months ago, schools have been bombed or turned into shelters for displaced people, such as Rama and her family.
Instead of waking up and going to school with enthusiasm, now we wake up and wash our faces. It takes us an hour to wash our faces. Then we line up in a long queue for the bathroom. When we finish, we have to go get water, and the line for water is, of course, very, very long. We keep filling salty water, then we go fill drinking water. After we finish, we also line up for the bathroom. Then, when it's time to eat, we line up in front of a charity kitchen like everyone else. The line there is very long. It's a struggle.
There's no end in sight for the conflict. The United States, Qatar and Egypt have failed to mediate a deal that would secure a ceasefire and the return of hostages held in Gaza by Hamas. The latest bloodshed in the decades-old Israeli-Palestinian conflict was triggered on October 7th, when Palestinian Islamist group Hamas attacked Israel, killing 1,200 and taking about 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's subsequent assault on the Hamas-governed enclave has since killed over 40,000 Palestinians, according to the Hamas-run health ministry.
The European Union faces intermittent shortages of Ozempic into the final quarter of this year. That's due to strong demand for the diabetes drug. But maker Novo Nordisk said this week the problem won't affect all member states. However, the company recommends healthcare workers limit initiating new patients on Ozempic until the supply situation improves. Novo is racing to expand production capacity to meet runaway demand for Ozempic and its related obesity drug Wegovy. Some analysts forecast the obesity drug market could be worth about $150 billion by the early 2030s. A Novo spokesperson told Reuters the firm was working to expand its global production capacity. They added the firm is set for almost $6.7 billion in capital expenditures in 2024, just under double last year's number. All doses of Ozempic are currently available in the US. Volkswagen's former chief executive appeared in court Tuesday. Martin Winterkorn faces fraud charges over the so-called Dieselgate scandal. It comes 9 years after the German carmaker was found to have rigged emissions tests. Millions of VW cars were manipulated to pass environmental tests. Winterkorn lost his job in September 2015 and became the figurehead of the scandal, the biggest in VW's history. The criminal charges against Winterkorn include fraud, market manipulation and unlawful false testimony before a parliamentary committee. He's also alleged to have failed to inform the capital market in good time about the mass manipulation of diesel engines in 2015. Winterkorn has denied the charges against him. The 77-year-old has suffered from health problems, causing delays to the start of the trial. It was the former CEO's first time in court since February this year, when he appeared as a witness in an investor lawsuit. He denied any involvement in decisions to install the so-called defeat devices that made harmful diesel emissions seem cleaner than they were. Winterkorn faces a fine or a custodial sentence if found guilty.
Linda Sun, a former aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, left a New York City courthouse on Tuesday after she was charged with secretly acting as an agent of the Chinese government in exchange for millions of dollars in compensation and gifts. Both Sun and her husband, Chris Hu, were arrested Tuesday morning. Each pleaded not guilty to the criminal charges. Gerard Schaefer is a lawyer for Sun.
Charges are disappointing, that they are the product of an overly aggressive investigation.
Excuse me.
And we are looking forward to exercising our right to a speedy trial and addressing these accusations in the forum where it's most appropriate, which is a court of law.
Federal prosecutors in Brooklyn said that while working in state government, Sun blocked representatives of the Taiwanese government from meeting with officials and sought to arrange for a high-level New York state official to visit China. In exchange, Chinese government representatives allegedly arranged for millions of dollars in transactions for Sun's husband, who had business activities in China. Prosecutors said the couple used money to buy a 2024 Ferrari Roma sports car, as well as property on New York's Long Island and in Honolulu worth about $6 million. Governor Hochul was not accused of any wrongdoing. A spokesperson for Hochul said her office fired Sun in March 2023 after discovering evidence of misconduct, reported Sun's actions immediately to authorities, and has assisted law enforcement throughout the process. The judge ordered Sun released on $1.5 million bond and Chris Hu on $500,000 bond.
But there are dozens of hostages still remaining in Gaza, still waiting for a deal that will bring them home. It is time to finalize that deal. The people of Israel cannot afford to wait any longer. The Palestinian people, who are also suffering the terrible effects of this war, cannot afford to wait any longer. The world cannot afford to wait any longer.
U.S. stocks slumped on Tuesday to kick off one of the market's historically worst months. The Dow dropped 1.5%, the S&P 500 fell more than 2%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq plummeted 3.25%. Market sentiment fell as Institute for Supply Management data on Tuesday showed U.S. manufacturing remained subdued despite a modest improvement in August.
It looks like a big down day today.
Melissa Brown is Managing Director of Investment Decision Research at SimCorp.
You do have the ISM survey that came out a little bit disappointing and maybe suggesting that we're closer to that soft landing or being in a recession than we were. And we all know that the Fed is so data dependent. So they're probably going to be looking at this particular piece of data.
The central bank will also be looking closely at Friday's non-farm payrolls data for August. Odds of a 25 basis point interest rate cut by the Fed later this month are more than 60%, the CME Group's FedWatch tool showed. Investors see a less than 40% chance of a 50 basis point cut. The so-called Magnificent Seven megacap technology stocks, which have led this year's rally, plunged on Tuesday. Shares of NVIDIA dropped 9.5% as investors softened their optimism about AI. After the close, Bloomberg News reported that NVIDIA received a subpoena from the U.S. Department of Justice as the regulator seeks evidence that the AI heavyweight violated antitrust laws. Tesla fell more than 1.5% after Reuters reported that the electric vehicle maker plans to produce a 6-seat variant of its Model Y car in China from late 2025. Outside of big tech, Boeing dropped more than 7% after Wells Fargo downgraded the plane maker's shares to underweight from equal weight.
$279 billion was the value wiped off Nvidia stock on Tuesday. That's a record one-day loss for any US firm. Shares in the company tumbled 9.5% as investors cooled their enthusiasm for AI. The doubts had set in last week when Nvidia's outlook for the coming months failed to meet lofty expectations. Sentiment wasn't helped by reports Tuesday that the firm has been subpoenaed by the Department of Justice. Bloomberg says that's over possible antitrust violations. The broader worries over AI have also sapped shares in big players like Microsoft and Google parent Alphabet. Investors have started to ask when they will see a payoff from their huge spending on the technology. Meanwhile, chipmaker Intel also plunged Tuesday, down 9%. That followed a Reuters report that it plans a big shake-up over concerns its lagging rivals on AI. Overall, the US chip stocks index fell close to 8%, marking its worst one-day fall since 2020. The worries over techs then rolled on into Asian trade on Wednesday. In Japan, chip gear firms Tokyo Electron and Advantest were both down around 7% by late morning. South Korean chipmaker SK Hynix saw a similar decline. Those losses drove benchmark indexes lower around the region.